Welcome back to Mixed Signals, where we track the changes in this wild media age and talk to the most influential people who are right at the heart of them. I'm Ben Smith, the editor-in-chief of Semaphore. And instead of Max Tani this week, I have Josh Spanier, the VP of Marketing at Google, who you know from the sponsored segments on Mixed Signals every week. And I thought I'd begin by just explaining a bit of what we're doing with advertising on this show, because one of the kind of interesting and to me really engaging parts of making the show, which is ultimately a show about media, has been to make the advertising about advertising and in some ways eliminate the middleman. And I first got to know Josh because when you get to be editor-in-chief of a media organization, you wind up going on sales calls, which are mostly, in my experience, you kind of make your pitch and you chime in with your partners on the advertising side about all the interesting stuff you're doing. And you're talking to people who tell you how great you are and receive it very warmly and give you really like no signal at all of what they think and of like what they make of your pitch, and then you never hear from them again much of the time. And very early on in the history of Semaphore, we pitched Google on some ad campaign, and there was this British guy on the call who, instead of sort of smiling and nodding, said something like, I don't think you people have your acts together at all. Why don't you call us back in 6 months? And so that was my introduction to Josh, which was I really valued because the marketing industry is not always known for its absolute candor. I kind of appreciated that, got to know Josh a bit. And then when we were talking to Google about marketing for the show, we got talking about, what if this very candid, direct Google marketing executive was himself speaking to our audience about the stuff that we are interested in and our audience is interested in. Because in some sense, the holy grail of this kind of advertising is, can you do stuff that your audience is actually interested in? And many of the people, listening to and watching Mixed Signals are really wrestling with all the same questions that senior marketing executives are wrestling with. Some are senior marketing executives about how much media is changing right now, how to navigate it, how to build a business around it. And Josh is in this very weird position in which he is one of the biggest media buyers in the world at Google, spending billions of dollars buying media, running a big marketing team, but doing it while he is himself an executive at the biggest advertising company in the world, Google. So he is exactly the kind of person we like to talk to on this show. And let us know what you think of this conversation. Josh, thank you so much for joining us for a full episode of Mixed Signals.
I am extremely excited. I'm a little nervous, but thank you for coming to Mountain View and hanging out with us here at Google.
To begin with, I guess you and I are basically the same age, same generation. I got into the news business in the late 90s. You got into advertising in London in the 90s. And I think both of our careers have been kind of shaped by chasing this just vast wave of technological disruption that's just totally transformed the business we're in. And when I got started at the Indianapolis Star, there was a computer, which meant like a box in the middle of the room. And then there were these metal tubes that led from it to green screens at each desk. And you would input all your sort of stories, and you'd use the save get key to pull up old copy, and it would then go into the computer. And so I know that from my side, can you just tell us a little, like, what was your first job in advertising, and kind of what was it like?
So I am a failed journalist. I come from a family of journalists. My mother is a very successful journalist. My father was a very successful journalist. My brother is a successful journalist. My younger brother started out his career as a journalist, and I was like the black sheep of the family. So I ended up interviewing at a couple of media agencies, and I started to understand that side of the business. So I kind of stumbled into it, but it seemed journalist adjacent, telling stories, creating engagement, actually being part of the media ecosystem.
What was it like? You were placing ads on television? Like, what was a job in advertising, in media buying in the late 1990s?
I started my career, I guess, in Zenith Media in London in 1998, and I was literally a TV buyer. My job was to send faxes back and forth, not emails at this point, send faxes back and forth between the TV stations and the brands I was representing, arguing over individual spots. So the number one show at the time might have been sort of Coronation Street on ITV. Sure. And so you would buy a spot in Coronation Street and you would try and upgrade it to a better position. And I hated it, just to be clear. I wasn't particularly good at it because that negotiation is sort of like all the stereotypes of, a cigarette sticking out of your mouth and, like shouting to the phone and all that sort of stuff. But media then, from a marketing perspective, was a mix of three things: you buy your TV ads, you buy your newspaper and magazine ads, and you buy your billboards. That's it. Maybe a little bit of radio, but it was a very, very short portfolio of tactics of things you were doing, and everything was really about the creative, what you were saying in the spaces that I bought. But it was email had only just come along. So I spent the first couple of years negotiating how to negotiate with the sellers of media on one side, hear their pitch, what was going well. And I did that for like 2 years, a year and a half. I didn't love it. And there was this thing called strategic planning. And strategic planning was really about the why. Why do people do what they do? Why do they buy what they buy? Why do they think what they think? And my job as a strategic planner was to understand the humans behind the sale, or who are going to make the sale, and then use those to develop an overall marketing strategy, which will enable you to engage with those customers in totality. And I found that pretty fascinating because a lot of it is human psychology. Us humans are irrational, and we operate in a world where we think everyone's being rational, making rational decisions. And clearly there is no rational decision to buy a Ferrari, right? Not a logical, rational decision. The decision is, I want a Ferrari and they're goddamn cool. And it's like, okay, that's I guess it's a rational decision, but it doesn't feel totally rational to spend $400,000 on a car. But I'm not going to begrudge anyone who wants to do that. But it's pretty fascinating. What makes people tick? And then how do you tie that to a business outcome? How do you tie that to what humans are doing in their lives? And you find an insight, you unlock something, and it's really, really fun.
One of the things that I sometimes think about in my career and yours is that when we were thinking about getting into our professions in the 90s, like so many even the words, like I was a blogger for a while, I would not have known what that meant. We would not have known what Google was, much less TikTok, much less, hyperlink, all the sort of, even the language of our professions is totally new. Was there a moment when you kind of felt like, okay, this whole world is really going to change. The technology is really going to turn your career upside down?
The first time I've ever really experienced YouTube, I was kind of blown away by it, right? And this was, I guess, before I joined Google. So this is back in sort of 2004, 2005. And my job at the time, I was working in an agency in San Francisco called Goodby Silverstein Partners. And, my job was to sort of identify audience behaviors and how they're using technology and what they were doing. And YouTube was this remarkable, there is something here. There is something compelling here, in part because, I'm spending 4 hours on YouTube myself versus watching whatever was on Desperate Housewives or whatever TV show was big in the sort of early aughts. So that was a big one, just seeing, this is possible. And I guess you can tie that back to the transition from dial-up to sort of to broadband. It wasn't always easy to watch video, but that was a big thing for me, like the light bulb going off saying, oh my God, you can program your own TV shows, your own network, you can broadcast yourself as well. That was pretty remarkable. Another one was, I remember when the iPhone came out, right? And the first iPhone came out, and there was a guy at the agency who was very much into technology, and he had the iPhone, and he showed me this thing called the Beer app, which was ridiculous. It was just a complete novelty. But basically, you took the iPhone, and it looked like you had a pint of beer on it. And I was British, and I didn't know that. And then you tilted it, and with the accelerometer, it looked like you were drinking your pint of beer. And it was probably made by some student. It showed no useful purpose, but the connection of the touchscreen, the brightness, and then the accelerometer actually allowing you to play it. It changes the paradigm. It's like the Matrix, when all of a sudden you can see everything around you and sort of the different connections. That was super exciting as well. Just like, there is so much to play with and do here. It kind of blew my mind.
And we're now, I think there's almost been a kind of steady acceleration from, I don't know whether you want to say 99 or 04 or whenever, to today. And it feels like now we're in a particularly kind of high G-force moment with the birth of this new AI industry and in journalism, in marketing and technology and entertainment, everyone grappling with it. How do you, I don't sometimes feel like a temptation to maybe this is where I get off the ride. I don't know. How do you feel and how do you kind of stay motivated around? Is it disorienting? Does it stress you out? Is it exciting? How do you just engage with this just constant change?
At times it's overwhelming, right? I think it's overwhelming for everyone. The pace of technology has just, the cycles of adoption of new technology have just got faster and faster and faster. The thing which keeps me going is I just find this stuff fascinating. And going back to, humans interact with things the way they want to. And when you start looking at that and understanding it, it's just really, really endlessly interesting in what people are creating and doing. And you look at the explosion of media from YouTube through to all these other platforms now, TikTok and beyond. And it's like, people are doing amazing things in whatever niche or whatever interest they have. And it's like, why are they doing that? How do they do that? And AI is the latest wave of transformation. We used to be in just the mobile transformation. We used to go from big screen TV and the radio, I guess, to, okay, now we can have desktops, and then laptops weren't really mobile, but you went to a coffee shop with your laptop, and then to mobile phones. Each stage has just sort of widened and widened and widened the aperture of where and when and how you can do things. And it's really, really fascinating. So yes, on my down moments, it's kind of overwhelming, but I'm just really amazed at the behaviors of humans doing interesting things around the world, and how that's scaling into business, how that's scaling into creativity, how it's scaling into health and medicine, right?
And what in your role buying media for Google and broadly in the giant Google marketing apparatus, what is changing? Like, what are the places that you're seeing the most change, heat, interest?
I'm getting my whole team together next week, and I've got this theme in my head, which I'm going to talk to the team about. And the theme is just like always, like never before. And the fundamentals of marketing, as we've spoken about on the pod, are going to continue. Human behavior, the fears, emotions, wants that everyone has, that's all staying true. And ultimately, marketing is a motive and a sort of science-based discipline. What is changing and what is really sort of transforming things is, obviously, we've talked a lot about AI and cloud technology and the speed of everything being adopted and what's changing. But I'm actually seeing this sort of transformation of opportunity from AI. The ability for me to make things myself, the ability for my team just to go, oh, we have a problem here, let's fix that, and let's use a bit of AI coding to do that. We do a lot of social boosting, the notion of we've got some cool piece of content, we want to put it onto social platforms and have it be scaled. Now, Meta and most of the social platforms cap your organic reach, so you have to buy it. You have to buy reach on Meta. So we get all these inbound requests from inside of Google Marketing saying, hey, can we put some money behind this? Can we put some money behind that? It takes us 3 or 4 hours to evaluate each one. That's slow and laborious. And I know this doesn't sound super exciting or sexy and stuff, but from my vantage point of, if I can build an AI tool, and 2 non-technical people went to Google Gemini, used a tool within it called Canvas, and they built a forecasting tool to evaluate these boosting requests. And it takes, instead of 3 to 4 hours, it now takes under 30 seconds, right? They can get on with their regular job and all the stuff they're doing, and it's allowed to scale exponentially. They're happier, I'm happier, our customers internally are happier. I'm really excited by that because it's just, I see some of the potential. And that's honestly within the weeds of my part of the business.
Yeah.
Oftentimes in industry, we talk about the really big, sexy stuff. The stuff that wins at Cannes is like the really big, grand-falutin sort of stuff. And that's cool as well. But I can make my job better and more fun. My personal concern with my own use of AI is that I rely on the AI and I lose my own sense of taste and judgment. These tools only get us so far. We still need to keep our judgment and our taste, and actually they're enhancing what we're doing.
Yeah, this actually, you preempted we're going to have some questions from listeners later, but you preempted one of them, which is this idea that AI almost sounds like, I think some people think, threatens to kind of totally homogenize, in particular advertising. That you talk about needing to bring taste and judgment. I mean, is there some risk, and do you feel that like suddenly all ads are starting to look the same because ultimately they're kind of made by the same machines?
So, blunt talk, the marketing services industry broadly, not just Google, the entirety of every advertiser in the world, we're really good at making crappy ads. We have made a lot of wallpaper ads which are eminently forgettable and have done for a very, very long time. So I'm not totally worried about somehow we're going to ruin the creativity of every advertiser in the world through AI. That's just not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of AI dross, just as there is already a lot of dross without AI, right? Sorry to my industry for, crapping on us a little bit. But what I see is the opportunity to do more interesting things. And the cost of creativity, not in terms of actual final shoot, but the cost of testing an idea. Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Or Gemini, give me a couple of ideas. Why don't we have a pink unicorn run through this ad at this point? You can start doing that, and there's no consequence to doing that other than just exploring things. So I'm actually expecting more creativity, more interesting work. I know that seems like a super optimistic and positive thing, but I'm choosing to see the glass half full. And I genuinely think that unleashing true creatives' capacity to think even bigger than they have done without the consequence of having to get a client to sign off on an expensive shoot in Cape Town or something before they go there, it's going to be great. It's actually really fun. I've seen more creativity happening.
Let's talk a little about like your role at Google. You are a marketer who is, among other things, buying ads on Google properties as well as other properties while working for Google, and also having input in the biggest advertising business in the world, which is how Google markets itself to everyone else.
Yep.
And meanwhile, buying ads on Meta and on other competitors' platforms. And I guess, first of all of it in the context of a famously engineering-driven organization, product-driven organization that I think has always been a little skeptical of all this other stuff. So I guess, first of all, how do you, I think it's something people in your business think about a lot, how do you sort of assert marketing's role and value in a company that I think has historically been a little skeptical of everything that isn't engineering?
There's a phrase we sometimes use at Google, which is data trumps opinion. Data trumps opinion. Now, it's not absolute, because at a certain point, the data only takes you so far. But the starting point is, can you prove something works? Can you show the impact? And actually, the very genesis and basis of Google's success as an advertising vehicle was someone is searching for wheelbarrow on google.com. And then a paid ad pops up for wheelbarrow. Oh, that's exactly the thing I was looking for. That intent signal was so tight and so powerful that data very quickly could show you that's a good use of the Home Depot's ad to advertise wheelbarrows to people looking for wheelbarrows, right? And all of marketing kind of stems out from there, or that sort of notion. I'm doing an activity in the world. Can you prove to me that actually that activity is going to result in a business outcome that we are looking for inside of Google? So that's been the starting point. Over the years, and I think critically, marketing is a central part of what Google does. And actually, our leadership really believes in what the marketing function has been doing. We wouldn't spend the money if, one, we couldn't prove it, and two, we didn't actually believe in it.
What are the most successful campaigns you've run? Are there a couple where, because I think also Google Search in particular is like one of these products where like kind of sells itself, or at least that is the impression on the outside. Are there campaigns you're sort of obsessed with and think about as real successes?
Back in the day, we launched Google Photos, right? And we launched it during the Olympics, I think in 2016. And it was just a very clever campaign, which kind of gently poked fun at iPhone. Because you used to get messages on your phone saying, you're out of storage. And so it was people taking pictures on their phone. And at the critical moment of the picture, Sasquatch was appearing. Your kid was hitting a home run. The message would appear on the iPhone saying, out of storage and stuff. And Google Photos had unlimited storage. That was a really clever insight about people's usage of behavior and a really important, frustrating thing they felt. And Google Photos had this technological solution. And at its best, Google builds amazing technology which solves a need in the marketplace or a need for people. I've loved those campaigns where we brought that together. People's need in something funny, clever, or witty, or just super relevant in the moment. I've really enjoyed working on the Pixel phone campaigns.
And in some sense, that's a more classic kind of product marketing into a pretty competitive environment.
100%. It's incredibly competitive, and we are absolutely the challenger brand. We've had to do things differently and create interest and excitement and engagement around the world, not just in the US. We've launched in many, many markets around the world. But that's ended up in some really spectacular moments in my career and within, for some years ago, we had Eminem performing a rap song on top of the Empire State Building, all filmed using Pixel cameras, right? That was a really wow, what is going on here? But that was kind of a cool thing. But these are the things you have to do if you're trying to create engagement and attractiveness and positivity towards when you have an 800-pound gorilla in the room. So the Pixel work over the years has been super fun, super engaging, super challenging. It's not easy business. At this point in my career, the stuff that I really admire is the stuff which is sustained, the stuff which is a larger platform. I look to some of the brands out in the world. I think Nike have done a remarkable job of positioning themselves. Just do it. I can just say that to you, and it means so much. It's so resonant. Whether you be Usain Bolt or some high-performance athlete, or you and me, running around the local running track sort of thing. And their ability to build their brand, sustain it, and then bring it to life underneath that's been incredibly impressive. And we've done that within Google and a number of our product lines, which I'm really just blown away by the sustained, incremental, step-by-step, journey-by-journey, fighting in the trenches and the big swings, which has actually transformed the business, be it on YouTube, our NFL Sunday Ticket product, a whole number of areas, Google Cloud. These are long-term strategic bets for the company, and marketing, it helps grow them.
I wanted to talk about actually the context in which I first met you, which is the sales call. And you have this, I think from my perspective, super interesting experience. Like I'm occasionally, with Justin and with Rachel and with my colleagues on the revenue side of Semaphore showing up and talking about our products to people like you. You are on the receiving end, I assume, of nonstop pitching from people like me and like more like, the sales folks on my team. And I'm curious, like, what are you seeing like in that market now? And I think this is of like very intense interest to many people listening to this show. What are you seeing that is interesting, that's exciting, that's of this moment to begin with? Like what do you find most compelling when someone is sitting down to, pitch Jeff Spanier?
Back in the day, reach and frequency were the big thing. And it was about how big an audience, rooted in our TV legacy and history as a marketing industry and radio before that. But I can reach the most people. And, if you reach the most people, eventually that will lead to some sales, right?
Yeah.
That is less and less engaging and relevant. There are lots and lots of platforms. There's lots and lots of partners who have a lot of reach. What we actually are looking for is more engagement, action. People actually showing active interest versus they're watching TV with an iPad and a phone and, several other things going on at once. In terms of pitches from publishers, what audience insight can you tell me that I wasn't aware of before? So a few years ago, one of your competitors in the news space came to us and talked about an insight which I found really compelling, really, really worked on us. It was this notion that we have this great influencer news audience. There is a cohort of those people who every day between 4 and 6 a.m. get online, and the very first thing they do is open up our app and read the content on our app. Why don't you target those people in that moment? And then we'll sell you a whole load of other stuff to activate that. And there was a really clear insight. They understood who their audience was, what that audience was doing with their property, and that turned that into a compelling pitch that we go, yeah, let's do that, right? And it worked really, really well. So that's where the best salespeople, for me anyway, work, because they actually tell me something about their audience, who they know best, often better than I do. You know the Semaphore readership, listenership, and audience better than I do. So you can tell me stuff about them. And then if we can tie that to an advertising experience or product, bingo.
And then conversely, I assume you hear whatever the cliche of the moment is, whatever thing everybody is saying right now. Like what is the like absolute kind of repetitive cliche that comes up in every sales call and you kind of like roll your eyes?
Well, I mean, over the last couple of years, everything is AI, right? We brought you AI donuts. It's everything AI through up the wazoo. One of the things I've got very good at and is sort of the BS meter on metrics, right? Like someone comes in and they find a way to articulate, we are the most valuable impression on a Tuesday between, 3 and 4, every other month sort of thing. And then they spin that and they put that in tiny type, if at all. So one of the things you have to look out for is the more esoteric and weird the claim is, the least likely and least credible and believable it is.
Well, the nice thing about dealing with you is you're terrible at disguising your BS meter. So it's sort of instant feedback loop.
I try. I also play poker, which maybe explains why I'm not winning at poker. Like any good relationship, any good interview, any good sales, relationship, listening really, really matters, right? And the first meeting is usually a meeting where you sort of listen, and it's the second and third and fourth meeting where you actually go, you said this, I understood what your business is trying to do, here's what our audience is doing, here's a good idea that could perhaps do that, right? So when that works out really, really well, great things happen. So some years ago, we entered into a business deal with the New York Times, right? So the New York Times had this giant photos archive, something like 8 or 9 million pictures, undigitized, sitting in the back end of their vault in the basement of their building. They didn't know what to do with it. We had Google Cloud, which has amazing technologies for scanning pictures, and we were able to make the connection of, we can help you with our technology to scan all those pictures and build a digital archive of all the stuff which is sitting in your basement and slowly degrading, and turn that into actual editorial content, actual stuff that your editors and readers will find fascinating. We as a marketing organization, as a business organization, can actually celebrate Google Cloud enabling that technology for the New York Times.
See, that was like one of the great, I think, marketing deals of the last decade. But I think it's actually like people in my business, journalism, although our salaries are often paid largely by advertising, like I think often don't really totally understand it. Like, why would you spend all that money digitizing the New York Times' archive? Like, thank you, sounds like a great cause. How is that advertising? How does that help Google?
The fact that the New York Times is using Google's technology to solve a problem they have, we've got this big warehouse of pictures, we don't know what to do with it. is the starting point. It's using our technology, and ultimately we're a technology company. People using our technology is what we are most excited about. If we can enable that to happening through some of our marketing programs, that's great.
But just to sort of close the loop for people who don't spend their lives thinking about marketing, that's valuable to you because people see it and they think, it's pretty cool, this thing Google did. Like Google enabled this for this company, maybe I could use it. I mean, 'cause I think that's actually something that like regular people, including journalists who are deeply in this industry, don't always understand.
Well, one of the questions I ask of you, Ben, and I ask of a lot of publishers we work with is, what do your editorial teams, what do your content teams want to be able to do that you can't do right now? And that perhaps we have technology just sitting around that would actually enable a better, richer, more fun
and then you're marketing yourselves through some cool thing that you've enabled.
We can, and many brands will go and buy a celebrity, and they'll basically use a badge of celebrity. Oh, this celebrity is really into driving Toyota trucks now, right? And it's like they've been paid to do that. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? If that celebrity is famously a massive car nerd, right? And so, and his or her socials has sort of made that clear. The fact that they're doing a partnership with this car brand may actually enhances it. The same with us.
Right.
We're looking for those partnerships where it's organic, authentic, and there's a real reason for being.
So we solicited and got a number of audience questions. I already asked one. So a lot of the audience questions were what I think of this kind of interesting moment in the industry where the two big trends, one is these new automation tools around AI, and the other is the rise of creators, who are very, very human. It's interesting because these things point in totally different directions. But first on the creator front, how do you think of the role of creators and in brand advertising? I mean, on Mixed Signals, we've had this big range. We talked to the CMO of Verizon who was telling us about how she's sitting on TikTok waiting for something to blow up and racing to get Verizon in there first. Talked to the CMO of Visa, Frank Cooper, who was I don't bother with these kind of, sort of the moment influencers. I just want the kind of big picture, big cultural moments. How do you think about that? How do you think about creators?
So just in the way you ask that question, there's a distinction there between creators and influencers. And influencer marketing has been sort of the next big thing every year for 10 years. Yeah. And honestly, me personally, I struggle with it. The notion that pretty people traveling the world, making it all about themselves, taking selfies in front of famous places, it's inauthentic, it's not great, and I don't want my brand and our brands associated with that. The contrast is on YouTube with creators. Nearly every creator who is successful is because they are speaking to an audience for a very relevant reason. They have a skill, an expertise, a topic, something that they are deeply passionate about, and there is an audience of people out there. And when you work with those people, it's all about the authenticity of their audience. And one of the things that we strive to do, and it's critically important, is not make a creator read a script. Not make a creator take our marketing brief and actually sort of regurgitate what we want to hear. They have to understand what we're trying to do, but then transfuse it into what is relevant for their audience that is watching them and their space on YouTube or wherever it is. So that authenticity is the really critical part. You can find creators who speak to an audience who will be relevant to who we care about, have them do so in a genuine and authentic ways, then it's great.
And then on the other end of that spectrum, endless conversation about AI. The last couple of years in Cannes, you can't escape it. One of the questions we had was about personalization. I mean, I think about this with news a lot. I think one of the big outcomes of AI, if we want it, is going to be you could get a totally personalized news feed from an interface that knows your stock portfolio, knows where you live and where your whole family lives, knows your ethnic background, can pick out from the universe of news the exact things that you want to know and that only you want to know. How do you think about that? How much personalization do you want? How much do you want things to be universal? What works?
We actually don't care about personalization anywhere near as much as maybe the industry obsesses and thinks that it does.
Why not?
We're kind of operating at scale. We're selling products and services to large swaths of people. The amount of effort it takes to go super personal, even if we could do that, it's just not worth the payout. Because you actually, if you're thirsty or hungry, food ad, beverage ad is very relevant to you right there and then. You don't need much more than that. I don't need to know exactly which flavor of orange juice is Ben Smith's unique flavor.
And the hamburger doesn't need to speak your name.
The hamburger definitely doesn't need to speak your name. So actually what we see again and again is actually if you have a good understanding of your audience and the things which motivates them and motivates the category, and you can serve up a relevant and engaging message related to that, you can actually get huge impact by actually speaking to a pretty broad group of people, which is a much more effective use of our time than any specialization that could be possible.
Another question from a listener. What do you think the biggest blind spots in marketing are right now?
So one of the biggest blind spots, and I think it's universal, is we think people care a huge amount what we're doing relevant to us versus what's relevant to them. We care about our campaigns. We care about our launch moment. We care about our launch event, and we sweat the details as we should. But you're just living your life. You're just getting on with stuff. And I think one of the things that we have to do is move away as an industry from campaigns with a beginning, middle, and end into a more always-on, continuous, hey, we're here when you need us. We're not intrusive on you when you don't, and we're actually more engaging and relevant because of that.
It's funny, we had Mark Cuban on a few weeks ago, and we were talking to him about, I asked him whether he feels overexposed, because I think it certainly used to be that for a public figure, if you were out there too much, if you were always on, there was some sense that you were overexposed. And I think his view is there's no such thing anymore. Or at least he can be talking to all sorts of different people at different times, and there's just no assumption that any given person sees everything. Do you feel, is that true of products, that you worry less about a kind of ubiquity than you used to?
So I'm not gonna say Mark is right or wrong. I'm gonna build on your original question, and you made me think of something, which is us marketers like to broadcast ourselves. Here's what we've got going on. Here's our big launch and big announcement. And the thing we kind of miss is our total YouTube strategy. The fact that when you buy your cell phone, a lot of people go, how do I maintain my battery life? How do I ensure that this expensive product I can use continuously? An ad telling you to buy a phone is not the thing you need. Right now, you need some sort of customer management of, here's how you can extend the life of your phone. Here's how you can do this. Here's how you do that. So that 360-degree view of how people are using your product is an area where I feel like in marketing, we tend to obsess about the Super Bowl ad, the shiny launch, the big campaign, which, as I said, stops and starts, versus the totality of the life cycle, because eventually that person who's bought your product is going to probably want to buy another one. Are you there? Are you relevant? Have they had a good experience? Do they value the connection and engagement you built such that they buy you again? Much easier to get someone to buy you for a second time to find a whole new person and sway them to buy you for the first time. So I work in corporate America. And I've always been jealous of entrepreneurs, people who've built something themselves, people who started something. And so I'm talking to you, Ben. You started Semaphore, 3 years ago?
Just about, yeah.
Wildly successful. How do you think about marketing Semaphore? What have you done to make Semaphore successful? What's it like to be you, to actually build and create and do all the things that I'm trying to do in my day job as well?
Actually, marketing for news brands and media brands is just a notorious nightmare, because you, the head of marketing, are sitting over here, and meanwhile, a bunch of maniacs are running around making content and throwing it out into the internet without asking you. But I think, we definitely are obsessed with our audience, and I think the place that we sort of started, and it is often, I think, a little different from a lot of news organizations, is we thought obsessively about our audience's problems. And really, the core one right now is that everybody, but actually particularly in some ways the people who used to be best informed and who need information to make decisions, are just drowning in terrible information. There's just this flood of hyper-partisan media that's meant to kind of make you feel better about the world, but not necessarily tell you true facts about it. And I think we think of our audience as people, as, again, not everybody. And it is sort of what you said before about scale. I think we feel like, in some sense, influence is replacing scale as a key metric. And, but we think of addressing an audience that can't afford to be lied to, that really wants to understand what is happening and how different parts of this fragmented universe think about it in a very kind of even-handed way. And we just try to speak really, really directly to them, and to stay very disciplined in a way that I think has come to me later in my career. This was definitely not how I thought about the world when I was at BuzzFeed, but have tried to stay very disciplined about what our own brand is as journalists. Not all journalists. I think there's lots of space for different kinds of journalism, and for very partisan journalism, for very gossipy journalism, love it all. But I think we really do see ourselves as having a pretty clear lane. And I've tried to hire people who really care a lot about that, and to frame every element of our journalism around that idea.
Influence over scale is a really good line. Now, the trick for me, and as a marketer, and for you pitching, is how do you measure that? And one of the fundamental challenges for me in my business and is, how do you measure the things which are really hard to capture? influence, engagement. Engagement, you can have metrics of activity. Did someone scroll over something, or did someone click on something, did someone like something? But actual influence, it's like one of the holy grails of us in marketing. How do we find the science to actually capture influence? Super interesting. And way, way, way back in the day, one of the Larry and Sergey's, brilliant insights was actually the invention of PageRank with Google Search, was the number of links and the quality of having that links gave you a sense of influence. Oh, this is a more important website, so it's actually more likely to be relevant to what you want. It's funny how it all comes full circle.
I think in a way, what Google in that era did for the sort of vast World Wide Web needs to be, we're going to have to figure out what that is in this brave new world. I mean, one of the really interesting questions when we did a story about this was the brands who care about their reputations have realized that when you ask Gemini, you ask ChatGPT, what do you think of my company? They turn to journalistic sources. They don't look at Reddit comments. They don't look at, Yelp reviews or whatever, or Google reviews. They do look at journalists, at Semaphor's coverage of this company. And so CEOs and communications directors who had, I think, kind of gotten used to saying, forget the lamestream media, I'm just going to go direct and have a social media campaign, are realizing that actually to influence, for now, these LLMs, they need to talk to journalists again. I mean, it's a very unsettled, strange new world. It's really fascinating.
So Google, the company, just published, I think last week, a bunch of new research about AI overviews and the success of AI overviews, and 2 billion people are using them, but about the quality of the traffic that it is driving, that it's actually creating higher quality traffic and giving people more, people who actually use AI overviews and then searching more on the topics that they're interested in. Super fascinating, because that's not intuitive what people thought going in, but actually it's actually the case.
And meanwhile, the entire giant industry of people who, for a while very successfully, and I think you guys eventually beat them down, at gaming Google and getting lower quality results higher in the ranking with technical tricks, have totally reoriented toward getting into the AI overviews and getting into every AI system. I mean, I think some of those people are finding that crap, the best way to get into these AI systems is to talk to journalists. So sorry, everyone who thought they could escape us. By the way, you're getting pretty good at this. You've had a lot of practice. I'm told you have your own podcast coming out.
I'm really excited. We're launching a new podcast in partnership with Google. It's called Frontier CMO, and really is going to be exploring the outer boundaries of marketing, specific to media, advertising, video, short form, everything, and you name it. We're going to explore the potential, the opportunities. Got some really amazing guests lined up, some really influential, smart CMOs. I'm going to try and get under the hood of how marketing works and what the next frontier of marketing is going to be.
Looking forward. I suspect you'll be able to hear a bit about it on Mixed Signals.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ben. This has been really fun, a great experience.
And I guess we'll see you again next week on Mixed Signals in a shorter form.
Yes, indeed.